Hello and welcome, depending a little bit on where you are on this planet. Good morning or good afternoon or even, well, good evening if you're dialing in from Australia. We're very happy that we have a large group of people joining us. Not everybody is there yet, but we hope people join us while we're on the go. And we're very happy that we have Stuart Jehan today with us. This is the, okay, wait a moment. A bit. Yeah. Okay. No. Yes, sorry for that, but my screen was frozen. Here we go. We had a webinar some while ago on the 9th of February where we had Alexandra Hexman from the Murdoch University in Australia joining us and explaining how to make the most of study abroad from a university perspective. So what a university can do to really enhance that experience going abroad and how to unpack that experience. What we'll be talking about today is how employers view study abroad. What is it that employers value in that experience of going abroad? And today we have a guest speaker, Stuart Jehan, who is joining us from Robeco. He just flown in from Luxembourg to Rotterdam this morning, and we're very happy he made it on time. What are we going to talk about today? Study abroad and what's the added value for students, for employers. We touch base upon that. Really briefly, what it is it that really involves into employability? What is employability and how can study abroad enhance employability? And then for the pièce de résistance, the most important part, we're going to talk and listen to Stuart Jehan talking about the employer perspective of study abroad. Stuart, you will see him here briefly, and you'll see me down there as Nannette Ripmeester. I'm your host. I work for Expertise in Labor Mobility, and me and my team are actively involved in setting up and running the CareerProfessor.works platform. Just a little bit for us to understand who you are, because we're keen to find out who you are. So we'd like to sort of bring you in and find out what your professional role is. So if I can ask you to briefly vote on what is your professional role, we have a little bit of an idea who's listening in today. Are you working with an international office of a university, a career service of a university, a company representative, a student, or other? And could I ask you to vote? I see nearly everybody has voted, so the last vote's still coming in. So if you haven't voted, that's the good thing about technology. We can see everything you do. Most of you are with an international office, 40% of the people listening in, 20% with career service, and 27 students. And well, other is always interesting to know who's the other, but that's kind of difficult to ask in a webinar. What's the added value of study abroad? If you look at it from a perspective of students, you meet new friends, you have new experience, new stories to tell. You also get a more creative brain. Recent research has found out that if you travel a lot and spend a lot in unknown circumstances, new countries, new cultures, you get a more creative brain, you become more responsible, you get more openness and curiosity towards others, you become a nicer person, more self-aware, and you gain in emotional stability. That's all very, very nice, but how are you going to translate those new experiences and those new stories into a story that an employer is keen to hear? There's some research out there that talks about what study abroad can do for employability. Tolerance of ambiguity is one of the things you learn. That in regular terms is acceptance of people's culture and attitudes. curiosity or openness to new experiences, confidence, trust in your own competence, vigor or the ability to solve problems, serenity, beautiful word, but what it means is your awareness of your own strengths and weaknesses, decisiveness, the ability to make decisions. We've done some research, and you can see the source down there. It's published in the AIA handbook, and the article is called International Business Consumers of Global Talent. And we worked with employers from across the globe, asking them how important they would value international experience when hiring an international recruit. And the VP Human Resources for Aon Hewitt in the US said, if you can compare apples to apples, you go for the one with the global experience. IBM in the UK said, it's a differentiator that makes you stand out from the crowd. Philips in the Netherlands said, it's an asset which proves you're able to work in an ever-changing environment. However, all of the employers value global experience, but when they talk about global experience, they mean solid global experience. 6 weeks on an exchange, staying with friends of your parents is not something that they consider really solid global experience. So it has to be more than just a short spell in another country. If we look at employability and what employability is, it's a set of skills and qualities that employers are looking for in potential employees. And feeling employable is being achieved when a person feels that his or her talents are really supported to the max. And that employability consists of two parts, hard skills on the one hand and soft skills on the others. And it's exactly those soft skills that can be acquired by experience or study abroad. We've come up with a formula for employability, and we said employability is qualifications plus work experience plus skills multiplied by contacts, or employability is qualification plus foreign experience and skills, again multiplied by contacts. And I just want you to realize that this is an actual advert from a law firm based in the UK asking for lawyers, law students, to join them. Of course, they all had to have a solid law background, but these were some of the other things that people have been asking for, that employers are asking for. That is quite a lot. So yes, the struggle is real. And it's interesting because on the one hand, employers ask a lot, but they also state, 39% of employers state that they have difficulties in filling vacancies for skilled labor. And in 2020, the potential shortage of college-educated workers is estimated to be 38 to 40 million people. So there is a real mismatch going on. And if you think that there's this apparent abundance of available talent, because there's lots and lots of people going to higher education, more than ever before, why is there still this skills gap that it's apparently there? And why is it that there's also reports being made that a lot of underemployed people are working there? So people are working under the level of their education. That's an interesting one to start thinking about. So what do employers want? Do they want Superman or a Superwoman? Well, they want cultural sensitivity, tolerance and openness, emotional stability, effective communication skills, social skills, and perseverance and resilience. And are these skills always the same? Well, if we compare, this is some data from the World Economic Forum, we can see that the skills in 2015 are slightly different than what is expected in 2020. Some of the skills are still there, such as creativity, but they've moved up, going from place 10 in 2015 to place 3 in 2020. Critical thinking, complex problem solving, those are the key skills. And some of the other things have moved down a little bit. And we know ourselves For 20 years, we have asked employers what it is that they look for when they recruit somebody international, and we have seen that those skills really change over time. What's important to realize that in the end, it's up to a student to turn their experience abroad, their knowledge and their skills into professional success, because no job will chase you, but you will have to chase the job. So we have to help students to think about what they've learned when they went abroad and how this relates to their professional role. And one of the things we can ask is, how can we help students to unpack their study abroad? What do they need to understand to know what it is that employers are looking for? I've mentioned that we're active in CareerProfessor.works. CareerProfessor.works is a platform that helps students to understand, for instance, how they can hit the ground running. How do I write an effective CV? What do I have to wear to a job interview? What do I say when I talk about my study abroad? How do I talk about it in such a way that an employer realizes what it is that I've gained while being abroad? So how can we help them unpack their experiences by making them think how to present that experience? And well, we all know if you ask a student who's been going abroad what they've gained, the most often answered answer is, well, it was really nice and I had a lot of fun. That's of course nice to know, but that's not what you're looking for if you're an employer. So we have a question for you, another poll question. And I'm gonna launch that for you now. Do you believe study abroad will boost employability? Could I ask you to vote again? A few more votes, so please all let us know what you think here. Do you believe study abroad will boost employability? Well, the majority of you think yes, and there's a few that think maybe. I think if you are going to listen to Stuart Jehan, you probably understand that it's not a maybe, but it's a sure yes. It will enhance your employability, provided that you're able to tell a story in such a way that an employer understands what you've gained. And now I'd like to hand over to Stuart to talk about his experience and what he values about study abroad. Stuart, can you start sharing your screen?
Hello, yes. My name is Stuart Jehan, and let me just... Here we go. Yes, I'm employed by Robeco. Robeco is one of the largest employers in the financial services industry in the Netherlands. And I'm here to share some thoughts as to why studying abroad is likely to boost the employability of it. I hope you'll all find this presentation very useful. So without further ado, let's make a start. So what do potential employers look for in a candidate? Well, as we all know, competition for jobs is high, but knowing what employers can look for can really help you stand out. There was a global study undertaken in 2011 which highlighted some of the main attributes to a potential employer. This survey covered 10,000 employers in 116 countries, and it covered all major industries. So which attributes do you think were the most important? Academic qualifications, soft skills, ambition and flexibility, or other? I'm just seeing what the poll results are. I may need a little bit of help, please, Nannette. unfamiliar with the webinar format, so please excuse me.
Stuart, it's just showing that 27% is thinking that it's academic qualifications. Okay. 33% say soft skills and 33% say ambition and flexibility, and there's 7% that says other.
Ah, that's interesting actually. Well, if we're going through by order, these four things, employers do of course look at applicants' academic qualifications, as well as checking how impressive your grades are, or the level of education you've reached. Employers will also consider how well matched your academic qualifications are for the role in question. Now, whilst academic qualifications may get you the interview, it's actually the soft skills which is the most prominent attribute which is being scrutinised at the interview stage. So at this stage you have to show that you have the right soft skills for the role. So you need to show qualities such as motivation, professional communication, teamwork, and problem-solving abilities. As for ambition and flexibility, well, we have to go back to one of the most asked interview questions, which is, where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years' time? Employers are always interested in getting an idea of your anticipated career path, which can again help them assess how well a candidate fits the current job opportunity. But interesting enough, aside these three attributes, and probably the most interesting note of all, is that 60% of respondents said that they would give extra credit to candidates who have worked or studied abroad. So what do employers like about candidates who have studied abroad? Well, with business becoming more globalized, employers are looking for candidates which are more adaptable to different environments. The perception of many employers is that graduates who have studied overseas tend to work more effectively in an environment comprising diverse cultures. They may be more open to working in other parts of the world during their career. They're more likely to be competent or even fluent in a foreign language. And it's this intercultural competence and perhaps a perceived greater willingness to be internationally mobile which can potentially add value to a candidate. So what do you think employers like most about overseas graduates? Is it their experience of cultural diversity? Is it the openness to the possibility of relocation? Is it their language skills? Or is it other? You have 20 seconds, please, for this poll. Nannette, are you able to tell me the results once again, please?
Yes, I will be able to share the results with you. So it's 71% that says experience of cultural diversity, 14% says openness to the possibility of relocation, 7% said language skills, and 7% said other.
The 70% anticipating a little bit more of a little bit more about what I'm going to speak about. But let's go through these in order. Cultural diversity. Well, this is clearly important to an employer because any employer wants to know that a candidate can work as part of a team. The possibility of relocation may also be applicable to some employers who are looking to perhaps grow internationally. These tend to be larger organizations, and language is obviously of interest to many employers also, depending on the type of job which you're applying for. And what comes under the other category? Well, there are several other things which may be of interest to an employer. It is the general personal development skills. It's the soft skills which lead to more balanced personality traits. And from my experience, it is actually these traits which tend to interest employers the most. So the personal development skills often found in overseas graduates, well, they tend to be more flexible and open to change, better experience in embracing different perspectives, tend to be stronger in confidence and self-awareness. They have the perception of being perhaps a little more mature. They tend to be a little bit more open-minded and perhaps adventurous. Tend to be more proactive in their approach to tasks. And they may also have built up a network of international contacts. So it's important to note that the employment benefits related to studying abroad are not only restricted to students pursuing a specialist language degree, for instance, but also to students pursuing other courses of study. So potential students should not be put off an international mobility experience if they're not fluent in the relevant language. It's all part of the experience. So once you've done the overseas experience, or once you've studied overseas, how can you communicate this in your CV? Well, there's certain information which you should always look at providing. So in which country or city did you study? Why did you choose that location? Which course were you following? If an internship, what was the name and the type of the business? And last but not least, what were your responsibilities? The next stage, obviously, the interview. In your interview, you should be able to talk about your experiences abroad. It is a very, very exciting part of your life, but in an interview scenario, just don't bore the interviewer by talking in depth about your travel experiences unless they have demonstrated a specific interest. Instead, you should always try and use some balance and always try and link your foreign experiences to your skills and competences. For instance, I can easily adapt to change because of my experiences while studying in, or perhaps I can work well in a multicultural environment because I studied with a diverse pool of people in. And another example, I'm a confident individual because I knew nobody when I went to study in. So as we have seen, studying abroad tends to provide a lot more benefits than we often first think of. It's a big step for many students, a journey into the unknown, but it can also be a very exciting part of your life. Whilst many candidates focus on the academic benefits of studying abroad as part of the decision, it is actually the soft skills which makes the candidate often stand out in an interview and thereafter. Many soft skills can be quickly developed during overseas work and study, such as confidence, adaptability to change, and a general ability to embrace different perspectives. And as an employer, it is many of these soft skills which are specifically required to become part of a successful team. And as you will have seen from the survey results at the beginning of my presentation, the majority of employers do place an awful lot of credit on those individuals who have worked or studied abroad. Well, I hope you've all enjoyed this presentation, and please feel free to follow me on social media, or indeed contact me afterwards should you have any questions after this webcast. Thank you very much. Over to you, Nannette.
Thank you very much, Stuart. This was very helpful. I knew what you were going to tell, so it was not a surprise, but when I first read your slides, I liked what you said about don't bore the interviewer with your experiences, your travel experience, because I think students sometimes have the tendency to be either very short, like, yes, it was very nice, I had a lot of fun, or want to go into really, really a detailed account of everything that they went through. So those of you who are listening in as a student and those of you who are listening in working for a university, please help your students realize that that's not going to work for them. What I also liked a lot, Stuart, was the fact that you mentioned the international network that you gain while being an international student. I think that is very often overlooked, that if you went to study in a particular country, you met students from that nationality if everything worked according to plan, but you also met a lot of other international students, and that is your sort of standard international network that you get as an addition on top, as a cherry on the cake of your own experience of going abroad. And I think that's a very important one that students should use more towards their advantage. We cannot have a real discussion with you, but we can have chat questions. So if any of you want to ask a question to Stuart or to me, but I guess most of you will be asking questions to Stuart, please feel free to use the chat version section and come up with a question and ask us a question, and we'll answer that as good as we can. So anybody that has a question, please feel free to use chat and ask us a question. Just so you know, the webinar will be recorded. We're recording it now, so you will be able to see it and listen to it later again. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, where we share quite a lot of what we think useful information. But if anybody has any questions, please type them in chat, and we'll be happy to answer. Okay, I can see some questions that are being asked while we were going ahead. One of the questions was, in my role in France, I find that employers are more focused on degrees. Which countries are targeted in your studies? Stuart, I think that's a question that both of you can answer. I'll start and you can think a little bit about it. Thank you, Nicolas, for that question. The surveys that we refer to were different surveys, not including Europe as a whole, not excluding France or any of the other southern countries. They were covering Europe, North America, and Australia, New Zealand, the studies that I refer to. And the Erasmus Impact Study is one of the surveys we refer to, and that is focused on Europe only. So it's not excluding France in that sense, but it's interesting what you're saying, that in France employers are less interested in finding out. Oh, it's Vicky, sorry, it's Vicky that's asked the question.
I think sometimes as well, Nannette, it depends on the type of depends on the type of company, because obviously larger companies place more focus on perhaps global mobility as well.
Sorry, could you repeat that once more?
Yeah, larger companies tend to place more importance on global mobility, from my experience anyway, because obviously your team, for instance, may be spread across different nations. For instance, here at Robeco, my own team is spread from Hong Kong right through to Miami, for instance, whereas smaller organisations, they don't tend to, unless they're looking at expanding globally or requiring some sort of specific language skills, they don't as much as much important in global mobility, in my experience. So, as you mentioned, our figures were taken from Europe and including North America as a whole. So there may be some country variances.
Okay, but it's also nice to know that there are country variances, and it's important for students to realize that there's differences from one country to another, which I can only agree upon, because we know that writing a CV for the German market is totally different than writing a CV, say, for the Australian market in that sense. There was a question from Karen about the reference made to the AIEA publication, if that's the Handbook for Internationalization. And yes, indeed, it's the Handbook for Internationalization. I see there's another question on that as well, but first I would like to pose a question to Stuart. Rolanda Bonte asked, what soft skills are employers mostly looking for? What do you think, Stuart, are employers mostly looking for when we talk about soft skills?
That's an interesting question, actually. I think from our perspective here at Robeco, the soft skills are mostly about being able to work as part of a team. So this will be good communication skills. It will be taking responsibilities. It may be the ability to work with a diverse pool of people, for instance. So these are all very important soft skills in the eyes of certainly a global employer.
Thank you, Stuart. There's also an interesting question from Nicolas. And he said, I heard that employers like to hear that you're passionate about something, but where's the line between being interesting and being boring when expressing your passion? Stuart, is there any example that you can think of where somebody was really boring you with their experience?
Yes, in fact, I have been involved in a couple of interviews where perhaps the person has been so passionate and perhaps gone a little bit over the top with their passion, so far so that you know, when they're actually asked questions about such subject and not being able to answer such questions in a in a good manner, that could cause a problem. But I think if you're passionate about a certain element of the role that you're going for, and communicating that sensibly, not going completely over the top, but you know, keep it in moderation, then clearly that's a good sign for the employer. But I think the most important thing is, if you're passionate about a particular subject and if you claim to be a specialist in a particular subject, then you, as a first step into employment, or a first step into the company, I mean, it's one thing to have an interest and be knowledgeable about something, but what I have seen before is you know, people coming out of college and claiming that they're an expert at something, and it really doesn't wash with potential employers. So with everything, it's a sake of, yes, you know, be enthusiastic, but you have to keep things in moderation.
I like what you said about keeping moderation. At Expertise in Labour Mobility, Michael asked us whether there's any workshops that that are available. And at Expertise in Labour Mobility, we give quite a lot of workshops where we help students unpack their experience and sell, between brackets, it to the employer. But what seems to be very difficult for students is how to come across as self-assured without trying to really sell it in a way that is beyond belief. So I like what you said about moderation there, Stuart. I've had people who went abroad for 3 months trying to convince me that they know everything about cultural differences, and you know, you can't teach them anything anymore. That is beyond belief, because 3 months in another culture will give you some experience, will help you with a few things, but will not make you the cultural expert the world's cultural expert. We had another question from Rolanda, whether we have examples of how studying abroad can help boost a career. What kind of career boost can we think about? And Stuart, maybe you can think of a few things as well. I'll start off to give you some time to think. What it can help boost in your career, Rolanda, for instance, is being more confident about what you can do. If you've never traveled on your own, the fact that you have gone to another country and traveled on your own, navigated an airport, met new people, had to sort your accommodation, had to sort how to navigate the study environment, understand how study abroad works. Those are all kinds of things that can help you feel more sure about yourself and understand a bit better how you function, for instance, in a team. So that is one of the things that you can do. Stuart, any things that you can add to that?
Yes, Nannette, I agree with you completely. Confidence is one of the key attributes which we look for in any employee. You know, clearly there are some roles such as accountancy and so on that confidence is not, you know, yes, confidence still has an importance, but it's not as important than perhaps a relational role. But confidence is a very, very important quality to have. But I was actually thinking of cultural skills because certainly here at Robeco, it's traditionally a Dutch company. It's actually been in the Netherlands now for over 85 years, and we're really pushing out globally at the minute. And one of the key attributes which we're looking at in any potential employee is the ability to appreciate different cultures, because, for instance, my team is dealing with team members in both Miami and Hong Kong and Japan, for instance, and we have to not know everything about every different culture, but at least have an awareness and an appreciation of different cultures. And in my opinion, a lot of this comes with experience of travel. So you know, that I would place as a very, very it's a very large skill which we are certainly looking at, and whether I assume this will be echoed by many international companies, both in the financial services industry and perhaps other industries also.
Thank you, Stuart, for that one. There's a few more questions coming in, and I'm not sure if we're able to answer all of them. There's a link available to the handbook article that we talked about. We're trying to upload that as a handout. If not, please feel free to send us an email and we can send you the PDF later on. People have been asking whether we would share the PowerPoint presentations. We will not share the 2 PowerPoint presentations, but we will be able to have a look at the handout, so or at the webinar again, so you'll be able to get most of the information, but we won't make the PowerPoints available. There was an interesting question from Nicolas about, is studying or traveling abroad only interesting for international companies or also for smaller businesses? I'll start it at first, because I think I work for a smaller organization, and we found it extremely important if people have some international experience. Now, I know that we're slightly an odd company in that sense, because we are in the area of international labor mobility. But what I notice in talking to other smaller companies, they find it a very useful experience as well, because people will have learned certain things while going there. And that leads me to Nicoletta's question: what if it wasn't a success? What if the study abroad period was ended earlier, things went wrong? How much can students say about that and sell it to an employer without being penalized for it? And I think, Nicoletta, if something went wrong, you have learned something while in that process. And if you're able to take out the learning from this experience, then I think you'll be able to have it work for you. If you only are able to say, everything went wrong and it was all everybody else's fault, so if you start blaming on the others, then I think you will be penalized for it, because then you haven't understood what the whole learning was about that. Stuart, is there anything, given the time, that you want to add to that? What if it goes wrong? Can you use that? What can you use from that experience in talking to an employer?
I think, Nannette, I mean, even if an experience goes wrong, you will have still gained some experience from it. And I think, insofar as an interview goes, the essential thing is putting this positive spin on things. It's not about, oh, the experience went wrong because of this, because of that. It's more to do with, okay, well, what are the key takeaways? What did I learn whilst going through this experience? And I'm sure, with any bad experience, there are positive takeaways as well as the negative, and it's the positive takeaways which are the things to dwell on with any potential employer.
Thank you very much, Stuart. I think that sort of will be it. There were a few smaller questions that will all be answered individually. I thank you a lot, Stuart, for having traveled very early by plane from Luxembourg to Rotterdam in order to make it on time for the webinar. We were very happy you were there. Thank you to all the participants who were there and who made it a very active session, which is nice, because that's always the problem with a webinar, that it's difficult to have a real conversation, but it felt as if we sort of had a conversation, no matter how difficult that is through this medium. I would like to thank everybody, and as I mentioned before, the recording will be made available to all of you. You will receive a link with the recording, and we will be organizing future CareerProfessor.works webinars, and we'll keep you posted when we organize those. Thank you all very much for being there and listening to us. Have a nice day and a nice week.